This isn't exactly what I wanted to find, but here it is. The absolute most dangerous moment? It's not panic. It is actually confidence without an emergency procedure. Okay, let's dive right into this book. Today, we're doing an explainer on An Astronaut's Guide to Life on Earth by Chris Hadfield. And right up front, I gotta tell you, this whole thing is actually about Earth pressure, not space. Space is just the perfectly clean laboratory Chris Hadfield used to discover these principles. It's a foundational masterclass on strategy, and, well, it exposes something kinda uncomfortable. Most of us think preparation just means drumming up more motivation, more belief, more pressure. But Chris Hadfield makes a colder, far more effective claim. He shows us that the person who names failure early actually has way more freedom when failure eventually arrives.
And man, that brings us to a pretty visceral reality. The mistake is not panic. The mistake is waiting until panic has the controls. In An Astronaut's Guide to Life on Earth, Chris Hadfield makes raw confidence look almost suspicious. Not fake, just totally incomplete. Picture a room right before launch. There's no grand speech happening, there's no dramatic music swelling in the background, no heroic glow. There are literally only checklists, valves, suit seals, and people asking very ugly questions about what exactly could kill them next. Now, that question feels incredibly dark down here on Earth, but up in orbit? It's mercy. Here at UpGoWise, the practice isn't to worship danger. The practice is to stop outsourcing your honesty to the emergency. You don't rise to that motivational speech you gave yourself in the mirror. You fall to the procedure your body can still find.
So look at this trap we all inevitably fall into. The belief says, if I think hard about what can go wrong, I am being negative. I really wish this weren't true. It sounds perfectly sane, right? Like nobody wants a leader who just infects the room with dread. But look at where it actually leads. The system calls this missing data. You might call it staying positive, but really, it's just image protection. In An Astronaut's Guide to Life on Earth, this is the ultimate reality slap. Untested optimism isn't optimism at all. It is just fear wearing a cleaner shirt. It tries to protect performance by hiding the exact facts that performance desperately needs to survive.
And this brilliantly illustrates the choice we make every single day. Look at this dilemma. On one hand, you skip the rehearsal of what could go wrong, and you get to feel clean, fast, and forward-moving. On the other hand, you rehearse the ugly failure, you look at the dirty checklist, and you feel heavy. Two competing options, carrying equal weight. Most ambitious people choose the clean image because, well, they want the look of forward motion. But pressure has absolutely no respect for how prepared you looked. It only reads the system you actually built. Both of these choices wrongly treat fear as a mood. But fear isn't a mood, guys. It's mission data.
Let's see how this builds into something quite personal. I want to pause for a moment and ask you a very blunt question. Place the lens right here. What risk are you currently calling a bad attitude because actually naming it threatens your identity? Think about a project that looks totally fine right now, but only because no one has asked the second question. An uninspected risk doesn't just magically disappear. It moves into behavior. It becomes a delay. It becomes vague language. It turns into sudden irritation when a colleague asks for a specific detail. It uses tidy little rituals to avoid dirty contact. This is exactly where your confidence is just doing public relations.
So the absolute crucial point is how we reframe this entirely. Negative thinking isn't a weakness. It is a strategic instrument. It's not the opposite of courage. It is courage before the audience arrives. Here at UpGoWise, we look for models that actually change how you operate. And An Astronaut's Guide to Life on Earth gives us a brilliant biological metaphor for this. Think of a living cell membrane. A cell survives not because it has dead, rigid armor, but because its boundary is alive. It distorts under pressure. It senses the environment, admits what serves it, and blocks what destroys it. Your preparation needs to be exactly like that membrane. Responsive, alive, capable of handling pressure without rupturing, all because it actually expects the pressure. Let's break down the concrete sequence required to actually do this. How do we convert fear from the theater of the self into the workshop of process? Step 1. Describe the failure without drama. Just calmly name the leak. Step 2. Design the response. Step 3. Rehearse until the body trusts the response. You're stopping fear from becoming an operational debt that just compounds in silence. Execution literally dies when worry stays vague, but execution skyrockets when worry becomes a checklist, a route, a designed valve. We are taking fear and we are giving it a job.
Okay, bringing this lesson back to Earth. Chris Hadfield has a fascinating rule for entering any new environment. Aim to be a 0. Now, what does that actually mean? It means in a new room or on a brand new team, your very first task is non-damage and usefulness. It's not proving superiority. It's not dominating the conversation to show everyone how incredibly smart you are. Learn the language, watch the rhythm, carry the bag. Doing the unglamorous work without narrating your sacrifice isn't small ambition. It is ambition with manners. It proves the mission is way larger than your entrance.
And that leads directly to this: sweat the small stuff. We're often taught that big outcomes come from big moves. But in severe environments, small signals are exactly where large failures first announce themselves. The problem isn't that you lack ambition. The problem is that ambition can actually bribe your attention away from the boring, tiny signals. You want the big breakthrough, so you skip the boring maintenance. You ignore the weak signal because it feels beneath you. But skipping the small stuff, that turns tiny, totally manageable leaks into massive, identity-threatening emergencies.
Which brings us to our second major dilemma. You constantly have to choose. Are you protecting the image that you are exceptional, or are you protecting the mission that makes you useful? You see, a high performer can turn their own talent into camouflage. A remarkably sharp mind can make avoidance sound incredibly strategic. You might refuse the small repair because your strong identity feels it's just unnecessary. But fear, when harnessed correctly, checks the latch. It asks the boring question again. It respects the colleague who saw the weak signal first. Protecting the ego feels good right now, but protecting the mission protects absolutely everyone later.
I want to drop a late-stage provocation on you right here. What if your next level of success is not a bigger, bolder move, but a smaller, uglier question? Now, this is the part that can sting a bit. You can be highly talented and still be a total hazard. You can be visionary and still make the room less safe if your brilliance blocks contact with reality. Your competence shouldn't be a mask that makes others afraid to point out a loose screw. Ultimately, you are responsible for the wake you leave behind you. As we pull all these threads together, we resolve that hook from the very beginning. Panic was never the villain. Panic was simply late information. The real threat was always refusing the early whisper. The self you protect might be the exact self that is blocking the mission. An Astronaut's Guide to Life on Earth by Chris Hadfield doesn't flatter your ego, it trains it. It teaches you that a boundary that cannot feel pressure isn't strong, it's dead. You don't have to fear failure, but you absolutely must stop fearing the loss of your story that you are somehow above basic maintenance.
EA, so here is how we make this permanent. UpGoWise turns this into strict, immediate practice. Before tomorrow, I want you to write down the one failure you keep dressing up as confidence. Then list 3 early warning signs for it. Next, give yourself exactly 300 seconds. HR. Set a timer. Write down the next 3 failure modes for today's highest stakes task. Do the uncomfortable rehearsal. Access your growth map. Stop waiting for the emergency to demand your honesty. What is the one risk you are refusing to name? Name the leak before launch.